Welcome to Real Talk, sponsored by Travel Business Mastermind, where we ask the difficult questions, getting to the real answers for business owners looking to improve their business. And today, we're talking about getting a grip on your business finances with Sheila Jones-Folk. Sheila runs a very successful luxury travel agency and recently launched Travel Industry Solutions, a company that helps make travel advisors more efficient by bringing them processes and sales scripts and compliance documents that allow them to do all of the mundane things about running a travel agency quicker, easier, and making them more profitable. Today's subject is not an easy one for a lot of entrepreneurs. I've been coaching business owners for 6 or 7 years now, and becoming their own CFO is probably the most challenging thing entrepreneurs learn how to do. Sheila and I today talk about the emotions behind that, and more importantly, the steps you can take to become that person who knows how the dollars flow through your business so that you can take better control. So pull up a chair, get yourself a hot cup of coffee, and enjoy the conversation. Okay, we are live.
Wow, thanks for having me.
Good afternoon, Sheila Jones-Folk. Sheila and I have kind of been connected for about 2 weeks now. I'm just getting to know her, about her business, about her career. She is a travel advisor. She also recently launched her own business, and she's going to tell you a little bit about that as well, where she tries to create operational efficiencies, because that's how Sheila's mind works. She looks at things that are happening and says, is that the right way to do it? Is that making you the most money? Is that the most efficient way to do it? Are you in compliance with all the things that you need to do to keep yourself out of legal trouble, to keep your business running properly? So she's really got this very operational mindset that is geared towards making her clients more profitable. She has a very successful travel advisory firm, and she's going to tell you a little bit about that. So I'm just going to hand it off to you, Sheila. Tell us a little bit about what you were doing before the last 3 or 4 years when you found yourself in the middle of travel.
Oh boy. So I'm actually a telecommunication major. I started my career first in TV and radio. That was very short-lived because I met my husband and,
Yep.
He had a business here. So I transitioned to marketing. I worked for various agencies, primarily that specialized in the hospitality tech space, went into the corporate world, managed a corporate marketing team. That was a little bit outside of my wheelhouse because that was for, and it does not sound sexy at all, but that was for the Institute of Internal Auditors.
Oh boy.
And so we were the global professional association for internal audit. And I ran a team there, which I think that's kind of where I started my love for corporate governance, operational efficiency, numbers. I had a stint with them for a number of years and then went back into consulting and helping other agencies improve their efficiencies and profits.
Right.
So I left that creative space of all of the writing and the campaign development and then moved more into operations and management. I was really looking for something flexible. I had lost my husband at a very young age, and I went back into the corporate world and it just wasn't working for me. I was speaking to my neighbor out in the driveway and he had retired from a finance job and was doing really well as an advisor. And he said, you should really consider doing this, Sheila. And I thought, okay, I could probably do that because that's my mindset. Just, give me a challenge and I'm going to tackle it. So I started my agency. It will be 3 years in November. And it's been a wild, crazy ride. COVID definitely was not expected by anybody, but we are making our way through. So that's how I got into the travel business.
And you focus in the luxury space in travel.
And I focus on the luxury space. Yep. And that's been great. I moved into luxury pretty quickly. I spent a lot of time networking. I had a big network of friends also who traveled in that space, and it sort of snowballed from there. They introduced me to somebody that used to be a client of theirs that lives in Chicago. I live in Florida. So I had someone in Chicago, and then they would refer me to somebody in Vancouver, and that friend grew up with somebody in India, and they had 3 friends that lived in India and then Australia. And so that's really how it grew. And as a matter of fact, today, most of my clients are not my personal friends. I kind of prefer it that way in many respects. I mean, don't get me wrong. I really appreciate all the love my friends show me, but sometimes it's a little bit harder to deal with your friends.
Separate that out. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, through all of my pains as a solo advisor and then adding ICs to my business, I spent a lot of time documenting processes, documenting questions that my clients would have, Googling a lot, observing what other travel advisors were saying and needing and doing. And I just really started to see some huge holes in our industry and a lot of people struggling the same way that I had struggled in the beginning. And that's where the new company came into play, which we launched at the Connection show. Well, we did a soft launch right before that, but at Connection. So that was huge. It was a great success. I spoke there for a couple of sessions. And what it is a legal document solution that also includes like booking tools, trip scripts, customer touch points, everything that you need to make yourself more efficient and professional and protect your agency. And what makes us different is we're not templates. We are actually legally enforceable contracts. We are backed by a warranty, and we are compliant in all 50 US states, which makes it very unique and not like anything else out there. So yeah, that's been fun.
That is complex, to be compliant in all 50 states.
Yeah, well, you know, one of my partners is actually a client of mine, a luxury client, and he happens to own the only contract and compliance business in the credit union world. And he's had it for 4 decades. And so he really was not afraid to tackle the compliance piece of that. He's so familiar with it. He's been doing it. I mean, that's a highly, highly regulated industry, and you have to be on point. So it was a pretty good marriage, bringing him in, and then the other partner who she's an internationally known trainer and motivational speaker. So it kind of rounds us all out a little bit.
Fantastic. So when you were in the job that you had before you kind of settled into travel, you know, when you and I were talking about a week or so ago, you were talking about how your role was to make your company, who was serving those clients, to make the relationship that they had with those clients more efficient, because obviously more efficient meant more money back to the agency. Did that come naturally to you, given what you went to college for, that all of a sudden you started to have to look at, okay, this is the money coming in from the client. This is who resource-wise is dedicated to it and what we're doing. What's the profitability look like on these clients? Did that come naturally to you, or did you kind of have to find your way to this place where you were looking at these numbers and how to craft, you know, those little P&Ls and say, oh, wait a second, I see what we're doing wrong or right here?
A little bit of both. Some of it is your intuition as a business owner and an entrepreneur. But some of it is also having some really great mentors that have been in my life along the way. I think also there's a lot of great tools out there. Like I know your program is not like anything on the market. We've talked about the financial piece of your tool, and I have not seen anything out there like that. But talking to some of those thought leaders, um, uh, applying it in my own business, trial and error. It was a combination of so many things. So I can say a little bit intuition and a little bit of learning.
Right.
But my philosophy is that I'm not going to go into business if I'm not going to make money. I mean, I'm not here to not make money.
Amen to that. And I hope anybody who's watching.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, when it's like when you get the really cheap clients who call you in this business and they want you to give them the $50, hotel credit or shipboard credit. And I always just say, I'm not paying you to go on a cruise. I mean, this is how I put food on my table, and I am worth this additional time, and here's why. So I don't go, I'm not in business to not make money. So I think that the ways that, at least for me, that I could start to make more money and have more bandwidth was to not only create all of the operational efficiencies, as much automation, systems, pre-planning, checklists, all your resources organized and in one place.
Right.
That's key. I mean, for me personally, the maximum amount of business that I can handle in terms of revenue per year is about 3 million.
Right.
And so anything beyond that, I really don't have as much bandwidth. So you've got to create the efficiencies. And then the other thing too is, I know from a travel agency owner perspective, is you've really got to analyze who are your clients that are making you money and what efforts are resulting in more income for me. I know in the beginning, it's really hard to turn away some of those clients, even if they're not your ideal client. Right. You and I have talked about that. It's hard, but until you can understand how valuable that client is to your agency, you really don't know if you're making any money off of them and how much money you're making.
It's if you're listening to what Sheila just said, I want to draw you back into something she said a couple of seconds ago. There are travel advisors, and I've actually written about some of them for Travel Market Report, who focus on mass market products. I wrote a story about a woman in Florida. All she does is mass market contemporary cruise ships, Carnival, Royal, Norwegian. She's not focused on luxury. She just cranks it out. And she has set up systems in her business for acquiring sales leads, quickly qualifying them, and then sending them an offer. And because her close rates, because she's qualified those clients so well, her close rates are high. She can turn around, the offers and then the bookings real quick. And I didn't audit her books, but she says, oh no, I make a really good salary for myself cranking out this kind of volume. For a lot of travel advisors, and I'm going to probably, overstep my bounds here, but say probably for Sheila, that doesn't work. That is not everybody's game. And when Sheila says she's working on luxury clients, she's talking very often about 6-figure cruise trips, round the world trips. So now when you take her $3 million goal and you start thinking about how many 100,000s does it take to get to 1 million, you're talking about 30 clients for one person to handle over that period of time. She can develop the efficiencies for that. I mean, there's a lot more work involved. She's definitely dealing with much higher touch clients who want a higher level of service. So there's probably more hours related to what she's trying to put together for these people. But the both models can sustain an entrepreneur, but not if you don't know the financials behind it.
Yeah, I have a colleague in the industry, and she sells over $1 million a year in Norwegian cruises. That's just one product.
Right.
And she's able to do that through efficiencies. She also has so much repeat business, and she also took a hard look at the value of each one of those customers and who she was going to bring back as a repeat client of hers, to see how much time she spent with each one of them, how many of those clients were booking and then canceling and then rebooking, and doing all. I'm talking pre-COVID, obviously, but there's a lot of financial details that I think every agency owner should be aware of. I do cash flow projections, so I do just a real rudimentary. I'm with a host agency who uses AgentMate. It's okay, and I don't know of any one CRM out there that anybody is totally in love with, or it solves all of their problems.
Correct.
So I do cash flow projections in just an Excel spreadsheet, so I can see what my next year, my next 2 years. I have bookings 3 years out now, so but I do take a look at that, and I have a name with that number, so that's real important. The other thing too is I did finally hire a bookkeeper, a professional bookkeeper, because the time and the level of frustration that I would have having to do all of that was just too much, too time consuming for me. I could focus on one client, sell one trip, and pay for that service. And now I have peace of mind.
Right.
You and I talked about that chicken or egg scenario too, on how to increase your revenue.
Yes. So what Sheila's referring to is, and she was also mentioning what we do, Myrna and I do for Travel Business Mastermind. One of the things that we like to do is we have an Excel workbook where we ask you to think about your top 3 clients, the clients that you love the most, not necessarily that they produce the most income for you, but we ask you to think about the client that really, oh my God, I love when they come to me. I love the trips that they take. I am so energized when I work on that particular client. And we ask you to think of the 3 top clients that feel and look like that. We do ask you, when you start to fill out this workbook, and it's like 5 or 6 questions that we ask you, we do ask you for numeric answers. Well, what was the size of that transaction? What was the commission on that transaction? How many hours do you estimate that person took you? Because hours relates to your hourly pay. And if that client takes you 40 hours a week, well, then you don't have any time for anybody else unless you're working 80 hours a week. And we have you fill that out because now you can start to do projections. Well, if I only focused on clients that look like that, and I can figure out a way to identify more of them, then you can start to say to yourself, this might be the size of my business, and this is how many clients I'll need to do that, and how many hours a week I'll need to do that. And once you start feeling those numbers, then something like hiring a bookkeeper at $40 a week or something is such an easier decision, because if you've got cash flow now, and you're really going to work towards that business plan you set up, that those 3 ideal clients are who you're going to go after, and you're really going to work sales leads, and you're going to really work your closing sales skills, then you know what? The egg comes before the chicken, because you've got a plan that you can stick to. Which way did you go with the bookkeeper? Did you wait until you had the cash, or did you hire the bookkeeper in advance of the cash?
Well, that's interesting. I had 2 biggies that were monetary decisions for me. And I did hire the bookkeeper when I had the cash. I wish I would have hired her before I had the cash, because I would have more cash.
Right.
So that one I hired after I had the cash. The other pivot point though for me was hiring my first personal assistant. I had reached my bandwidth, and I couldn't grow the business beyond that without help.
Right.
So when you have ICs, they're doing their own thing. They're not really participating as much with your clients unless you send some stuff over to them. But even then, they're only working on that particular task. So I did bite the bullet. I decided to bring on an assistant, and I brought her on part-time at first, with guaranteed, a guaranteed minimum number of hours. But once I saw how great she was and how much it freed me up to go back to those ABC clients like you talked about, I became much more profitable, because she handles everything from the time that I basically close the sale, meaning the customer says, okay, I'm going to book it, to the time that they travel. She handles every single little detail in between. And now, just so everybody understands, is that I remind my clients of every little step throughout their entire booking journey. I don't just send them a confirmation and then they get their next email from me is their final payment reminder. There's a lot of concierge level services that I build into my service for my clients. So, having somebody who could execute some of those and automate that was pretty important. And you can see how it would help you to definitely grow your business and then book at your clients. Because, in one of the webinars that I do, which is the 7 Secrets to Success, that's one of the things I talk about. You have 3 buckets, A, B, and C. And this is how much time you allocate to each one of those clients within those buckets.
Right. And if you picked up on a very subtle thing that Sheila pointed out that I always tell our clients, if you are taking those hours and paying someone else to do something with those hours, what are you doing with those hours? If your time is money, and what you're looking to do is provide a higher level of concierge services, which then maybe justifies you charging fees. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? If that bookkeeper is costing you $30 an hour, twice 4 times a month, so now you've got that $120 worth of expense. If you're charging clients, let's say those 30 clients that Sheila needs to get to 3 million at 100,000. If your service guarantee with those people is time that you need to spend on all of those other concierge level services, then you can probably justify the expense, because you may not have been able to, without straining yourself and working 18-hour days, to deliver on that level of service. Therefore, that client says to their friends, oh no, Sheila is the bomb. I mean, most travel advisors only do this and this, and she did 5 other things for me that really identify why I like working with her. And that's the way you've got to think about the expense line on your cash flow statement. Is there are things that you're paying for. What are they creating for your business? If you've got a subscription to Canva, are you using it? Is it making it easier for you to post better content so that you're creating new sales leads that you wouldn't have had without the Canva subscription? And that's why I'm such a huge advocate for cash flow statements, because if you've seen a cash flow statement, on the top is your cash, your income, your sales, and on the bottom portion of it is your expenses. And each row for each thing that you do, you can break it out on as many items as you want. If you want to have a marketing row and underneath it you have Google ad dollars and Facebook ad spend and Canva as a marketing support tool, you can start to see what your monthly bills are for marketing and ask yourself, is that marketing creating the new sales leads? Is it causing clients to notice me as they follow me on Facebook and come back for that second purchase? But if you can do that another way without spending that money, just pick up the phone more, hire a virtual assistant who's trained in sales to pick up the phone and look at your CRM and go, okay, we're going to call these 20 clients this week because we haven't heard from them in 12, 18 months. And let's ask them if they're thinking of traveling. Maybe that's a better way to spend your marketing dollars. But if you don't have this laid out on a cash flow statement, it is so difficult for you to make those decisions. And what Sheila said earlier about, part of me is intuitive and part of me is numbers. the intuitive part of you may be fooling you. It may be, you may be thinking, I need those marketing tools, but you've never really done the analysis to figure
Right.
that out.
Well, here's the thing, at least in my space, in the world that I live in, I do keep a presence on social media and I have a website that's
Right.
my own. I don't have a
Those are
booking
the
engine
those are
on
the
it.
basics that you have
I
to have.
have the basics because it lends credibility, but I
Yep.
do not spend time in my travel business on other marketing dollars. I found that, and I did an analysis of it for me personally, my greater,
I
my time
love it. I
here
love it when an
spent.
entrepreneur says they did an analysis. That just thrills me.
Well, my time was better spent going down to Winter Park and sitting at Houston's at the bar for lunch by myself and bring my book. And inevitably, I would strike up a conversation with a businessman or businesswoman who was in there for lunch.
Right.
Or I could go to the Winter Park Village or down to Winter Garden. I would spend time. One, it got me out of my house because I'm home based and I got to eat really well, but it was a great way for me to network too. And then the other thing too is, getting involved in philanthropic groups. That's a great opportunity to meet other people. So my time was much better spent doing those relationship building things. I'm a big relationship person. I'm big not only with client relationships, but supplier relationships, because I do think a lot of my success came from my supplier relationships early on. But analyzing the time that you spend and the reward. And so I've gotten plenty of clients out of that going to lunch scenario, and their average trip spend is anywhere between $30,000 and $40,000, and they may book 3 of those a year with me or 4.
Right. And again, if you're listening close enough to what Sheila is saying, she's literally walking you through a cash flow statement so that if on the expense line, you would think of her spending time dining in places where she could find her prospects and maybe even bump into some of her existing clients. If you were to put a number on that, it's worth $50 an hour to Sheila based on her income every year from this business. Okay, so she's doing that, twice a week. That's $300 of her time, plus she's spending a little bit of money on food. Hopefully she's eating well.
Well, no, you can write the food off. It's an
And you
expense.
can write the food off.
I mean, listen, you've got the gas.
It's the best of all worlds.
You've got to learn how to write off those expenses too.
So if you lay that against a $30,000 trip at a 12, 14% commission rate, something like that, you can see how it's profitable for her to do that. And it's not just intuitive. I mean, it's intuitive for Sheila to think, where do people who spend the kind of money that I want to book trips, where are they that they could have a personal connection with me? Well, these different places that we all like to eat. When she intuitively thinks of that, but then if she throws it on a cash flow statement and she says, okay, if I had to expense that, 3 times a week or twice a week, what would that look like? It makes sense because she's making it back 3 or 4 times. Those people aren't hanging out on Facebook trying to make a decision about a $30,000 purchase.
No.
They're not Googling it. They're looking for someone like her. And that's why that cash flow statement makes sense to Sheila.
Well, there's lots of things too for people in small towns, because I do get a lot of folks that are in small towns who say, there's no way I could build my business to 8 million in revenue in 2 years like you did, because I live in a small town. So what are the things that I can do that would be profitable for me? And, there's lots of things that you can do in a small town outside of joining the clubs and partnering with local businesses. But, and those things should be accounted for and tracked, your time, the revenue share, the split. And I'll give you a couple of examples. If you're in tight with a supplier, suppliers have relationships with country clubs, golf clubs, networking groups, and they will pick some of their top advisors who sell their product to go and man their table or their booth at that event. And all you have to do is, some will pay your air, some won't, some will pay the hotel, but you get to keep all the leads. So you're there selling the product for that supplier, and you also get to sell yourself and your agency. So when you go look at the expense and what it's going to take to get
Right.
yourself there, don't look at just that expense piece. You've got to look at the reward and what you got out of it. I
Right.
used to do this for one big luxury cruise line, and I got business out of it. Make sure you just stay on top of that time, that effort, that expense, and then abandon what's not working for you. Blogger relationships are the most overlooked. This is the second one for your small town people. Overlooked relationships. So what? You have to give a cut to them. They can fill your block of rooms that you have in the Dominican probably in a matter of 24 hours. So, don't think that if you're paying or you're giving up or you're, whatever the thing is that you're relinquishing, don't focus so much on it individually, but
Right.
holistically.
Right. When I owned a coffee shop for 3 years, I gradually moved us off of a traditional cash register to a point of sale run by Square. And what I like to tell my clients is until I had Square, because when you punched in what somebody was purchasing, if they were adding something on that was an upsell for us, when I started to see the margins on the upsells, okay, if somebody asks for avocado on that sandwich and we purchased that avocado for 77 cents, but we cut it, that a sandwich only took half of an avocado, that's 38 cents of expense, but we charged them $1.25 for that upsell. When you start to look at your margins, you can make decisions like what Sheila just said, is that there's, giving a cut to somebody else, if they're bringing in a sales lead, may take your margin from 14% down to 13.6%. But if they increase your overall volume of those accounts, you're making that money back and then some. And it's reducing the amount of marketing and sales expense that you have to put out to go find them yourself.
Absolutely. It's all tied together. And that's why as a business owner, I don't care what business you're in, you have to know the numbers.
Yeah.
You've got to be into the numbers. You've got to, and if you don't know how to analyze it and it's just not your thing, and you're never going to grasp it, then hire somebody who can, even a consultant. Get with, somebody like your company who gives all of those drilled down sheets that will assist them, that they can then build upon with their bookkeeper, their CPA, or whatever it is. But if you spend a little bit of money, and I know that's really hard right now for so many.
It is hard right now.
I promise you, you can really increase your profits. It's a matter of efficiencies and identifying where you're making the most money and getting rid of those who aren't serving you well.
And here's unfortunately a little time for some tough love. So I have been working with travel advisors personally and directly for about 2.5 years now. Before that, I worked with entrepreneurs in other industries. And this cuts across pretty much every industry category I've ever worked in. For some reason, entrepreneurs, the majority of them, have a difficult time doing what Sheila and I have been talking about for the last 30 minutes. Numbers, cash flow statements, trying to understand how money flows through a business is the thing they tell me they dislike the most. Has that been your experience, Sheila, that you also find that this is not their favorite thing to do?
Well, yeah, because, travel advisors are creative. They think with a different side of their brain. So for the most part, at least that's what I've run into. And that part is scary. It's overwhelming. They just put it on the back burner and they have a cash in, cash out mentality.
Right.
I'm not saying that's everybody, but I'm saying it's a substantial number of them.
Yeah.
And I particularly see this with advisors who want to expand their agency and hire ICs. And I ask them why, what's your motivation? And I always say, do you know what the margin is actually on an IC? Because it's really, really low, like super low, unless you have a 400, agency or 400 person host agency where you have got, all these folks and you're charging just the monthly fee, and then you have a whole training program behind it and you're making money off of that. So you've really got to understand the numbers.
Right.
And most are just fearful of it, or they don't understand it. And it's okay. Hey, yeah. There's a lot of things I don't know and I don't understand, but I just find the person who does, and I'm like, here you go. This is for you right now. Your job. Take it over. I'm doing that right now with TIS. I mean, there are some things that I can do for travel industry solutions, but my time is so limited because I'm still running an agency, and we are doing this. We did our product launch, and I'm speaking a lot, training, getting a lot of questions from our customers who are buying the product. And I know what we need to do from a business standpoint in terms of marketing, but I don't have enough bandwidth. So here you go. Somebody else will handle certain aspects of it. I mean, the legal and compliance team, that's the easy part. That's their deal. They stay on top of it. That doesn't really affect me, but I am the marketer, and so they look to me to be the marketing person, the salesperson, the person that runs the company, hires the people, blah blah.
The chief cook and bottle washer, yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to quickly walk you through my journey with numbers, and I'm curious to hear yours. So I was an airline editor for Business Travel News back in the 80s and 90s, and the Department of Transportation didn't have all of its data up on the internet. There are a couple of companies came in soon after I started doing this manually, and they created some software for service products out of it. But I used to fly down to Washington, D.C. to meet with different people in the airline industry, but then I would head over to the Department of Transportation for about half a day. And there was a special office, and I had a friend of mine who worked in that office, and I would go through these huge paper books that showed what airlines were doing route by route, number of passengers, average fare. And I would compile all of this in a large notebook, fly back to New York where I was working, and then I would plot this stuff out in Microsoft Excel. It was my first introduction to Microsoft Excel, and I'm guessing this was 90, 91, 92-ish in my career. So I had the company buy Microsoft Excel for me, and all of a sudden I'm pumping out charts that are showing things like what we now call the Southwest effect. When Southwest Airlines used to come into a market back in the 90s, what it would do to both an increase in traffic, but also how it would reduce the average fare because everybody had to compete with Southwest on fare. And I started to realize I really like numbers. I like how they tell a story, because I was a words person. I went to journalism school and I was always about words. And now all of a sudden I was starting to see the truth of numbers. Fast forward a few years, and I'm working at American Express, and I am the director of communications for the head of a business unit, a huge business unit, a couple of $1 billion a year in revenues to American Express, and great profits. He was in the small business field, and now I'm attending his weekly meetings, and 90% of his weekly meetings were printouts of Excel spreadsheets, going over vintages of card members, projections on new cards that we were going to introduce, and what kind of accounts receivables would that create, and therefore what kind of profits would that create a year out, 2 years out. And now I'm really having my numbers challenged, the numbers side of me challenged. And I got to tell you, those first couple of years of being in Steve's meetings were difficult for me. They were hard for me to follow, but I slowly started to pick up on some ratios and some trends, and I could see things and go, okay, I see what they're doing here. Took me a couple of years. Now fast forward into the 2000s, and I'm a geek when it comes to Excel. I love creating formulas. I love helping people use what if scenarios in Excel workbooks to go, what if I reduced my Carnival cruise bookings and I increased my Regent bookings? What if I played with this and let's see what it does to my profits? What does it do to my revenues? And if you start to think like Sheila, what does it do to the time I'm going to need to spend to take care of those clients? And does it change my business model? I can't run my business selling to Carnival Cruise clients the same way I sell to Regent. It's going to require more services, more hand holding. Maybe my website's going to have to be more polished because they're going to be checking me out before they come, and it can't have just a regular website for someone who's going to spend $60,000, $70,000 on a cruise. And when you start to get numbers involved in your business, everything changes. And like light bulbs went off for me, Sheila, the last 12, 15 years. When I created a business plan for a retail running store that I wanted to build here in the Hudson Valley, it was all about numbers. It was nothing but pro formas and Excel spreadsheets because I had to go to a couple of banks to try to get some loans and make projections on whether I could pay them back. Were you always comfortable with numbers, or what was your journey into going, whoa, numbers are it?
Well, my mom started me with numbers at a very young age. She owned a construction company. Well, my parents did. And back then, you had the big general ledger.
Yes, I remember those.
Remember those?
They usually were in green.
So right through high school and college, I worked, in the company, during the summers. And so that was my first introduction to numbers. And then my first job with a PR firm, I was the PR manager, and I don't know why or how, but we had big clients, big Fortune 500 clients. And I just looked at all of the time that we were spending on certain tasks, and I couldn't understand why this company, the PR firm, wasn't that profitable, but they had these big clients. And then why weren't the programs as successful as they could be based on, the amount of effort that was going into it. So I started doing a lot of analysis on the staff, the time, the effort, the way that we were executing the programs for our clients. And then I started looking at the results of what we were executing. And I improved profits for the PR firm 300% that year, my first year with them. Mm-hmm. And I did this year over year for a couple of years. And then also our clients' exposure was improving vastly. That wasn't really my aha moment. I just took that experience and then I moved it over to my next job with a PR firm. Did the same thing there. It wasn't until I got to the Institute of Internal Auditors that I realized how good I was at the number piece.
Right.
I was only like 27 then, and I was an assistant vice president for this global company. I had a huge team underneath me. And as you know, nonprofits are a lot like the government. There's a lot of waste. People don't pay attention to what they're spending or how they're spending it because it's always going to be there.
It happens in publicly traded companies too. I can vouch for it.
It does. But I was with them for 5 years, but it really bothered me. It bothered me that nobody cared.
Yeah.
And we had to come up with these budgets every year.
Yep.
And present our budget. Each business unit would present the budget to the president of the company, and nobody ever followed the budget.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
It was kind of crazy. Well, guess what? My business unit, I was the first person. I went in and analyzed everything. I was the first person in the history of this 100-year-old not-for-profit to operate my business unit on a cost-neutral basis.
Right.
And I went, wow, like if I can do this, take this stodgy 100-year-old nonprofit and change, the way that they think and do things, then anybody can do it, but I got real excited about it. So that was my aha moment, was when I was working for them. And it was even more of an aha moment because the organization is made up of internal auditors.
Right.
You know,
Who should have known better?
Like the Auditor General of the United States sat on our board, you know.
It's, you know, it's like anything. If you take chunks of this at a time, you start to exercise a muscle that's new. It's, you know, if anybody, I'm a runner, so anybody knows that if you don't warm up before a run, you could take a cold muscle and you could strain it. So what do? You slowly do the behavior to let the blood start flowing through the tendons and through the muscles, and then all of a sudden they become more pliable, and then you can go exercise. Um, the same thing goes for becoming your own CFO. Take it in chunks, warm up to it. Do something simple like look at one, take your largest category of clients. I do all inclusive to the Caribbean, Rich. Okay. Where do you book those? Do you book them on Vax Access because you've got some wholesalers in there? You book them maybe a couple on a portal that one of your all inclusives requires you to book. It gets you more reward points or whatever. Fine. Pull that data together in one place and only look at how did that flow over 12 months over the last 2 years? You know, plot that and say, well, I tend to get the most bookings during this time of the year for those types of clients. And this is when those commissions tend to show up. And if you're putting the numbers in that you know how many clients and what the commissions were, now you can start to do averages on commissions. And now you can start to say to yourself, wow, when I book a Caribbean all-inclusive resort, my average commission is $230 or something, whatever. Now you can start to say to yourself, okay, I can go one step deeper now. What types of bookings am I doing? Well, I rarely book higher floor rooms. I rarely book ocean view rooms, or, you know, I'm doing a lot of garden view or whatever. Okay, well, you're doing a lot of standard stuff. Now you can start to say to yourself, but I know the difference in the room rates for these different these rooms or cabins on a cruise ship. What if all I did was focus on somebody who wants that? Now, all of a sudden, you're starting to both measure what you do and get a baseline, and then start to give yourself some options about how to grow your business. When you were able to get the 300% improvement at the private PR firm, was that including new clients and new sales, or was it strictly off of year-over-year business, just taking out the fat?
Just taking out the fat, that's it. And I've done that many times across the board. You have to take out the fat and you have to have efficiencies. And the efficiencies are critical to free yourself up to do the things that count. And so like with the TIS stuff, you know, I have that whole other outside of the legal contracts, we have all of that suite of products which allow you to have those efficiencies.
And
those
tell us a little bit about those. What are those other products?
So we have an entire suite of scripts, and it's broken down by cruise, by land, by luxury, by mass market. Not only does it walk your client through every step of the booking process from the time that they book till the time that they depart. It gives you, for me, what it did with my ICs was it gave them talking points to say, hey, these are some things that you can add, you know, add to your client's booking, or here's how you can add value so you can charge fees for concierge level services. And it also allowed everyone in my agency to be communicating in the same way to our customer base. So the scripts are designed to be uploaded to your CRM, that you can automate them. It frees you up. You're not constantly going, oh, I got to call the client. I've got to remind them to do this. Oh, I've got to do that. Oh, and if you have an assistant too, there's a standardization there. So you can do it if you're a solo person or if you're an agency owner. And then the other piece is we did professionally designed customer touch points where you just plop in your logo. It's all professionally done. And their tips, tricks, advice, you know, tipping guide, cruise guide, packing guide, you name it. I give a lot of ideas on other types of things that you could do to interact with your clients.
Mm-hmm.
And then basic booking tools, client intake form to um, booking checklist, cancellation checklist, trip revenue template. It's by trip. And then all of our contracts, of course, terms and conditions, COVID waiver, what we call it our travel advisory waiver, planning fee agreements. We give seller of travel guidance. Our toolkit lists out every document, what it is, how to use it, when to use it. And then we give seller of travel guidance and guidance on collecting fees.
Right.
So it's having the efficiencies. If
Right.
you have the efficiencies and you have a standardization, if you have an agency with ICs, those efficiencies will create more bandwidth, more room for you to focus on those client A and client B. And then the C are just kind of when you have extra time. And then, you'll start to see trends too. I do keep a list of where my clients came from, the referral base.
You're one of the few people who do that.
I'm sorry?
You're one of the few travel advisors I've spoken to in the last 3 years, and I've spoken to hundreds who track where sales leads come from.
Oh yeah, of course. Tracking where they come from. And of course, mine is all referral based primarily. Although, I told you I booked 2 Regent World Cruises this week. And one of them was a repeat client of mine who's already booked another world cruise and stuff like that. But the other one was a travel leader's lead. It came into my inbox. The lady lives an hour from me. That was like, whoa, where did this come from? And she booked it within a few days. Of course, I know the Regent product inside and out. I mean, I've sailed it, I've sold it, But yes, I do track where all my leads come from.
So, when you hear words like efficiency, sometimes people think that's only about time, but it's so much about dollars and cents. And, so many people, when they get something like, Travel Joy or Tess or whatever, client base, part of what you're paying for there, if you don't use it, then you've unwisely paid for it, is to try to use those automated tools so that if you get a script from someone like Sheila, and now you've never plotted all of those touch points that don't necessarily have to be something you personally do, but you want to make sure the email goes out. Now those things aren't going to drop off, and you can load them up in HubSpot or whatever tool you're using based on calendar dates and algorithms. And all of that can get done. And that's money if you're now spending the time that you would have been doing that selling, marketing, going to lunch in a place where your clients might be. You've got to convert that efficiency into what is it you're going to do to find either higher quality clients or just more prospects. You've got to do something with that time. That's dollars and cents.
Yeah, you can't just sit behind a screen and think that Facebook is going to be your solution. It's multifaceted. It's relationships. It's knowing the business of your business. You have to know the business side of your business, creating efficiencies, consistencies, and professionalism. I mean, there's so many pieces and parts to it, and they all work together. But knowing the business of your business and understanding how each activity you do or execute affects your bottom line is so important.
Yep. We're almost at the end of the hour. There's
whenever I talk to you, it just goes so fast because you and I both know this is so important. We love this industry. We love, helping and I just, I want to share my wisdom, and I know you do too.
It's, there's a lot of emotion caught up in all of this. And I would love to have a totally separate session simply on your relationship to money. Because quite a few of us, and I know I've had problems with money myself emotionally, and wondering, do I deserve that much money? And is it, and a lot, I have found out for a lot of travel advisors, there's this, oh my goodness, I'm getting paid for this kind of thing. And that then sends them off into not necessarily measuring the profits and losses, the debits and the credits. And maybe we bring you back for, with a couple of other people to strictly talk about the emotional aspect of running a business, because your psychology about this is going to either become an obstacle or an empowerment to you to finally digging in and getting to know those numbers and feeling good about them. I love it when I can do a whole cash flow statement on my own business and realize what I'm doing and just objectively step back and say, how do I create more money? Take the emotion out of it. How do I create more money simply based on the facts in front of me? And you really can't even start to get there to that objective state until you get serious about working with a cash flow statement. And that to me is the simplest place to start. It's if you can do it by month, where you've got a scratch sheet off to the side and you're figuring out how to plot your monthly income and your monthly expenses. It's so easy. Just go to your bank statement. What do I pay for regularly out of my bank checking card? What do I pay regularly out of one of my credit cards for my business? Subscription services that you have, insurance payments. Do you break your insurance payments up monthly or annually? And when you start to plot that and you realize, here's what I make, here's what I pay, then you can make objective decisions and take all the emotion out of it.
Yeah, you really do. You really do. I wanted to tell you, I didn't tell you this earlier, but anybody who wants to look at the product and they subscribe, we have a discount off of our launch. It's a $200 savings, which is huge. So
that's a lot of dollars and cents.
Yep, dollars and cents. The offer code is FBL, like Facebook Live.
And where do they go?
Well, let me give you the code. It's FBL 2020, and they're going to go to travelindustrysolutions.com.
Right.
And you know what? Anybody's free to email me directly. We have a sales email address on the website if you have questions. We're going to do some webinars too with Nexion. We're a preferred supplier of Nexion, to show people actually how to work the product and get into it and all that good stuff. But yeah, it's been a lifesaver for me and definitely helped to take me to $8 million in 2 years.
So just want to thank you, Sheila, for taking time out, for being so honest about how you've gotten to the point where you are, to talk through some of the subjective and objective ways that people grow comfortable with understanding efficiency and dollars and cents. If you had one last piece of advice to give everybody about getting started, this would be for the people who are still struggling with throwing their hands into their numbers. Is there one single piece of advice that you think is the best way for them to take that first step?
Honestly, and I talk to my daughter about this all the time, you've got to let go of the fear, because we're all going to make mistakes. So reach out to a trusted colleague, reach out to reach out to, reach out to your network. And don't be afraid to ask questions, because there is no wrong or dumb question. But I think don't be afraid. Start with pen and paper. Make it very, very simple. It does not have to be complex.
Yes.
Simple is best in many cases. So
absolutely
keep it simple. In, out, how much time I spent, what are my overall expenses, when is this falling, each month.
Right. But if you don't take that first simple step, you're never going to take the next one. So please follow Sheila's advice. Sheila, at some point before the end of the year, hoping to talk to you again a little bit more about your side of the business, about compliance and structuring the customer value journey that you use all of your different sheets for. So hopefully we'll be able to chat a little bit more before January 1st. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Take care, Sheila.
See ya.
Bye.